Hello, and welcome to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. Here at the Freedom Challenge, we strive to do good by helping enslaved women and children to do more than you ever thought physically possible, and to do it together by connecting women with a heart for a hurting world. We hope you enjoy your time being informed and encouraged with host Tracy Daugherty and our amazing guests. So let's get ready and join Tracy for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. This is your host and the director of the Freedom Challenge, Tracy Daugherty. The Freedom Challenge is a movement of passionate women. We participate in physical challenges that test our limits while raising funds and awareness that disrupt the cycles of oppression and poverty that can result in human trafficking. As a part of this, we have a significant emphasis on raising funds. And for some of the Freedom Sisters, this can feel really intimidating. We want to connect that idea of what it's like to be vulnerable and fundraising to generosity. And I am really thrilled and honored to have my friend Kim Moeller here. She is a generosity specialist. We are going to learn in community together, expand our knowledge about what it looks like to be generous women and to step into inviting people into God's mission, but we ourselves going deeper and having greater understanding about the opportunities available to us with the funds and the resources that God has provided each of us. If it's little, if it's big, however that looks, that we would be good stewards of the resources that we have. So get ready for some community learning. And I want to welcome Kim. Kim, welcome. Introduce yourself. Where are you calling in from? And also maybe how you got involved with the Freedom Challenge.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me as a guest on your show. It's always a treat to get a chance to chat with you. And I'm just privileged to have this time to share some thoughts because I'm such a fan of your organization and personally was able to be a part of a Freedom Challenge in walking part of the Camino. And it's just such a first-class organization. The women you recruit, the ways that you help people have the knowledge about the fundraising, and then just all of the intentionality that is sprinkled throughout the journey of being a part of a Freedom Challenge was just really inspiring. So anything I can do with my field that I work in to help support you, I am honored to do that.
Yeah. And one of the things that you do is you do your own podcast called Generous Girl. Is that's right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And alongside that is really some decade-long expertise in this area of Christian philanthropy, mission, what it looks like to be a good steward. So I want to invite you into sharing, first of all, how did you get interested in this topic?
Sure.
And what inspired you to be so focused on women and philanthropy and learning about what to do with the resources in our hands?
Great questions. Let me take us all the way back to when I was at UCLA and I was a poli-sci business emphasis major, always feeling called to the corporate world. That was where I thought I was going to be. And I was a believer and then was involved in Cru at UCLA. That's where it was founded. And long story short, but I felt like God was calling me to get the training with Cru, not necessarily on the campus like your typical Cru staff person, but they ended up assigning me to Josh McDowell in Dallas in his office. And as a part of that, I needed to raise support. But then the plan was I'll get the training and then I'll go back into the corporate world. Well, that whole idea of support raising, I never understood how that worked. And so I thought, oh, this will not be a problem. Like my family is super connected in Orange County and my friends, and boom, I'll have my support raised. And I felt very strongly in believing in what I was called to do, like the women who are a part of Freedom Challenge feel called to be a part of the challenge. But what I learned was when I would go out to do the fundraising, it sure is a different ballgame when you're asking for money for, quote, yourself than it is like if somebody works in fundraising and they're raising money for the stadium and they're saying, oh, the, Bryant Denny's stadium kind of thing, and the person gives the gift. Well, when you're actually asking for Kim Moeller, like, hi, would you support me $25 a month? it's very humbling, and it's just out of your comfort zone. So I began praying really hard that God would put the support team together and that I would not have to raise this again. Like once it was all put together, that I would be good to go. But what I found was it wasn't my network from my family who ended up being my support team. It was that God had already raised up individuals who he already planned to be a part of my team. So I would meet with someone I knew and they'd say, "Oh, I would love to support you, but I'm already maxed. I already support 10 people. But why don't you meet with my friend over here? He's a dentist and I'm sure he'd love to hear it." And then I would meet with the dentist and he would say, "I would love to support you. And why don't you meet with this friend?" So by the end, when God put the support team together, probably at least 60 to 70% of those people I had never met at all. And God did put that all together and kept it together. And I ended up meeting my husband. And instead of being on staff 2 years, ended up being on staff 4 years before I did go into the corporate world. But that lesson of support raising taught me so many things. One, it taught me anytime someone asks me if I can support them, I will do something. I will do a one-time gift. I'll do, maybe a monthly, but I understand like how it feels. And so I have a lot of empathy. And so that was great. That increased my empathy quotient and level. But it really also taught me that no matter how hard I worked, the dollars were not because of my effort. They were all from God. So and I'm a steward, I didn't own any of those dollars. You feel the real responsibility that this widow is giving you $10 a month and it's her hard-earned dollars and you want to steward it well. So when I went into the corporate world and now all of a sudden I had a salary, I really kept that mindset with me that, okay, this paycheck, it's not because of my hard work, it's really from God. And so I love that. I love that mindset really shifted for me from kind of a works mentality of it's all God's grace, it's all his blessings, and he's just asking me to steward, whether it's a little or it's a lot, it's all from him. And so with the Freedom Challenge, I just want to encourage any women who are thinking about doing this or maybe who've tried it in the past to feel confident that if you're called to be a part of this challenge, God is going to put the money together. Like that should be the least of your worries. The greater worries should be training and being, physically in shape, getting your sleep and all drinking the water, all the things. But the finances, like he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills and he will also bless those people. Like it really is a blessing. Like they were not able to go with me to Dallas to work with Josh McDowell. I got to do that. I had the privilege of doing that, but they felt the privilege of being a part of my team to make that possible. And it's the same thing with Freedom Challenge. Like the person maybe is not able to go on the Camino with us, but they want to be there. They want their financial support or their prayers to go with us. And it really does, take a village and we're really better together as a whole body.
I love that perspective and just imagining how early on in your life, in your shaping, was this greater framework of kingdom togetherness, of the fact that there is a great mission that we get to be a part of seeing the world flourish in whatever aspect that is, whether it's Frontlines mission, Josh McDowell,
That's
going
right.
on a trip, or even just being a person of faith in whatever place that he has us, the conversations around stewardship to say, I have one life to live, and that labor, influence, finances, and expertise are all things God wants to talk to me about. I love thinking about you as a younger woman and how intentional God was to set you in a place that would build your faith and that would also give you a testimony to so many others. I've been with you, Kim. I've learned from you as I've walked with you and asked you, peppered you with questions that some I'm going to bring today about how to think about finances, how to have meaningful conversations, and how to step into those moments with courage, right? We are encouraged, and it gives us liquid courage to do what we want to do. Like we just feel empowered by that. I want to know, why do you think it's so important for women in particular? Because in my case, and often in your case, you've got a podcast called Generous Girl, and I am working primarily with women. Why do you think it's important to have conversations around earning and managing and giving and wealth, sometimes people are really private or
Mhm.
squeamish, or actually even feel like maybe this isn't a topic that God's even that interested in. I would love to know about your experience in those conversations. Why do you think they're meaningful? And what are you seeing?
I feel like as women, we live in an amazing time. And you hear of the great wealth transfer where trillions of dollars is going to women. And we've never seen this before in history. Why? Nobody knows, but it is, like an Esther moment of such a time as this. Some of us listening to this podcast are single. Some are married. Some have had their husband do the finances all the years. Some are super savvy with the finances. But one of the reasons I do the podcast for The Generous Girl is I'm trying to help a woman be educated, equipped, and empowered to really live her most generous life. And that could be in those four areas that you mentioned, but also just at a basic level of like, how does that look with living generously with your time, your talents, your treasures? And whether you're the financially savvy one in your relationship or your spouse is or you're single, either way, like we're called to be wise and we all need to have a better handle on our finances. I mean, it's a lot like, anything. If you don't measure the numbers, you're not going to really know what's happening. You think it's one way, but then when you actually see the hard cold numbers, you go, "Oh, wow, I need to course correct, or I need to do this, or am I saving enough? Am I tithing enough?" And so, first of all, it's easy to kind of put our heads in the sand and be like, "La la la," just someone else will take care of it. But that's not going to help us. And the side of, statistically, the women outlive the men is so true. So we all need to be prepared, whatever age we are. I had a gal on my podcast who was in her mid-20s, who herself was a certified financial planner. Her husband was an Air Force pilot doing a training mission with a trainee flying the plane, and they crashed and he passed away. And she did not have her ducks in the row. She didn't have a power of attorney. She didn't have a trust, a will. And that was really a whole learning curve for her as she then, had to kind of really put everything in order after he passed away. And that's now a part of her practice in Indianapolis, where she really works with widows and understands, how quickly something can change. So today, also with tech, we have so much available at our fingertips with our various apps and the way you can easily access your accounts. And so I want to encourage the women listener, like, take it one step, do something. Maybe you've had it on your list that I really should get my trust put together and make sure my home is in that trust, or maybe I need to make sure my beneficiaries are lined up properly. It's all the things that we never really want to do or take the time to do, but they're really, really important. So that's the one side from the practical side. But then the other side of like being involved in this space with women is, from my big fat Greek wedding, I do feel that often the woman is the neck that turns the head. And I think the financial advisors who don't include the woman in the conversations really are missing something there, because, historically, often the financial advisor would just work with the spouse, the male spouse. And then when he passed away, the woman barely had the relationship with the advisor. And often she would find somebody else that she either felt more comfortable with. So I think these companies are becoming more wise to, we need to pull in both, spouses as a part of the journey. But I know one gal who, she doesn't really care about the numbers. She just wants to know every year at that annual meeting, how much do we have to give? And so that's her whole thing that she is focused on. And then she and her husband figure out where they're going to give their money. So there's so many ways, I think, that even if you're listening and maybe you have more time right now than your bank account, like either way, we're called to give our lives with our schedule, with our bank account, with everything that we have, the time, talents, treasures, and stand before the Lord so that he can then, when we pass away and we stand there one day, I think we're going to be amazed at everything we gave back to him that he owned anyways. We're going to be able to see, like, look at this $1. Let me show you how many lives it touched. Look at this 1 hour of time you gave to me, and look at what I did through that time. So it's living that posture of surrender. Our life is not our own. Every breath we take, it's all his. And how do we do that in a way where when we look back, we just see all that God did? It wasn't anything about us. It was just us dying to self so that he could work.
Yeah, I think about, when I hear you talking, I'm thinking about owner, manager, and steward. And most of us who are listening to this podcast are Jesus followers. Some may not, but the idea that we're seeing our lives, the way that we spend our lives, the way that we spend our money, is this place where we check in with those resources, and not as an owner that gets to just dictate this and that, but as checking in as a steward. Some of these conversations are a little uncomfortable when you're talking, especially with the younger generation, saying things like, you mentioned a trust, because then it goes into, wait, my life is unpredictable. I don't know. I can't plan tomorrow. And inviting people into the place as a Jesus follower to say, I'm not walking in fear, but what would it look like if I'm not in this equation? What happens to the things that God has put in my hands, or the people that are in my family? I think about my dad, and I'll just say really briefly, I am so grateful. My father passed away 5.5 years ago, and he did an excellent job. And I am forever blessed at the way that he led our family, my mom, myself, my sister, to think through things and to make decisions that were uncomfortable to talk about, but it very important. So I love all of this. And I thank God that he's put you as a resource to this community. So let me pose this question. If we want to get intentional, and we're beginning to invite God into, like, how do I expand my generosity? How do I think about wealth? Even naming wealth in my own life. Sometimes people are even uncomfortable with that. Like, I'm not wealthy. I don't, they're kind of skirting around it rather than looking at the bounty and saying, God, I see abundance. What do you have for me? So if I was a person beginning, square one, and I'm thinking about, where might I invest, or what should I do? How would you tell us to vet, or what would you recommend? Especially, and I'll add this one thing and you can just riff here. There are so many needs, right? There's just so many. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Sure. No, I think I love this whole topic, because so I work part-time for 3 organizations. They all complement each other in the sense of they're all under this umbrella of what we call the generosity ecosystem. So the one group is called the National Christian Foundation, and I represent San Diego for that group. So what that group does is that group helps you set up a donor advised fund. So I would say, if you're...
Can I pause you right there? Some of you may have heard the term DAF. I like to say this because sometimes there's these terms are being thrown out. So what you're introducing us to is a donor advised fund, DAF.
Or a DAF.
If you hear it, ladies, that is what that terminology is.
That's absolutely right. And NCF calls it a giving fund. But there are roughly 2,500 DAF providers in the United States. You would have a Fidelity, you'd have a Schwab. Many different organizations have donor advised funds. So taking a step back, let's just say we're looking at your monthly amount of money that comes into your household. I would say, if you're not already giving some back to the Lord, that would be step one. He encourages us to tithe, which means 10%. And I have to honestly say, anybody I work with the National Christian Foundation who says that they did this from the beginning of their marriage, or they did it early on, they have just seen nothing but God's faithfulness over the years. The way we don't want to think about it is, well, when I make more money, then I'll be generous. Then I'll give more money. I was with a sat next to this gal on an airplane a couple months ago, and she had lost her grandmother, and we got into this conversation, and she said, oh, my grandmother was so generous. And this gal was a single mom. And she said, when I make more money, I'm going to be generous. I said, it doesn't work that way because sadly, when we make more money, it becomes even harder to be generous. So it's better to start with nothing and give our piece back to God from the start. So if you're not already tithing, that's step number one. Maybe you're giving nothing, then start getting up to 2% and then try the next year 4% and get it to the 10. You've got the Rick Warren example who lives on 10% and gives away 90% of his income. And, amazing stories like that. But there really is the true premise that you can't outgive God. And if I had hours with you, I could share just these stories of people where they saw amazing things where they gave God the widow's mite and God multiply it. So that's step number one. So then you're looking at your money in each month, and then you're saying, okay, let's talk about 10%, and let's just make up a number. Let's say every month you want to give away $1,000 a month. That's going to be your tithe. So when you have an account at the National Christian Foundation, that 1,000 would come into your checking account and it would go over here to your donor advised fund. And it's how it is looked at by the IRS as, let's say that happens on the first of every month. Well, the IRS sees that as you've given that gift that day. You actually don't have to then choose which 501c3 you're going to grant it out toward, or if you want to give it to your church. It could actually stay there. Like some people might say, if I'm giving $1,000 a month, I want to collect $12,000 and make one gift of $12,000, which you can do. But the benefit of a donor advised fund is you're not with that year-end pressure of giving, because if you don't have a donor advised fund, which really just think of it as a charitable checking account, then you're going to be looking at, December 31st, you've got the holidays and all the craziness. And then you're like, oh my gosh, we said that we wanted to give 12,000 and we've only given 8 and we've got 4 more we need to give, and we need to allocate which nonprofit it goes to. So it's registered as a gift in 2025. So many advantages to having a donor advised fund, even though I work with the National Christian Foundation and my husband and I have had our own giving fund there for, I don't know, I need to check, maybe like 15 years. I would still have it with them if I wasn't working with them. And it's even a part of our will. Like we have our 4 kids and they're all getting the equal percent, but then there's a piece of our estate that the National Christian Foundation will get when we pass away. And then our 4 kids will be able to choose of the 90,000 organizations on the platform, who they want to give it away and grant it out toward.
Can I pause you right there? I do
Yeah.
think it's interesting as it has to do with National Christian Foundation. And I know there's other platforms where there's also an internal vetting to make sure that what is available to gift to in terms of nonprofit are meeting a certain, moral or biblical perspective. And there's something really meaningful about that as well. It's not you're collectively putting into a place where the kingdom mindset is being honored, which I think is a really beautiful, mindful thing to consider as well.
That's a great point, because that is one reason why people really enjoy the National Christian Foundation. And it was started in 1982. And since that time, $21 billion, billion, has been given out to these organizations, all that fall under what you just said. And they're constantly every 18 months looking at the organizations and making sure they're true. And so Freedom Challenge, for example, you could have your 1,000, come into your bank account, or your 500 or your 100, whatever it is. And then I could say, oh, I want to give $50. I want to give $500 to Freedom Challenge. And you just easily do that from the platform. So that's one piece of charitable giving. Once you've put in your money into a donor advised fund, it is no longer yours. I always say, if your house were to burn down, you would not be able to access the funds. It's charitable capital that's been given. But the other side of that coin, that's also my second organization I represent and I love working with as well, is you mentioned investing. So some people love granting. They love giving it away to the churches and nonprofits. And some people love to do that, but they also want to invest it. So this has a higher minimum amount of $25,000, but let's just say you sold your company and you have millions of dollars that's sitting in your donor advised fund that you would have had to have paid in taxes, but the government says, hey, if you're going to be charitable, we're going to allow those dollars to go toward charity. And so some people don't want to grant it away, but they want to invest it. So they might take 100,000 or they make 25,000 of that and then find a for-profit opportunity that's on our platform. We call those companies portfolio companies. And you can invest in a Christian movie that they're making, or you can invest in, we have a group in Rwanda. It's called Masaka Creamery, and they make yogurt, and 90% of their employees are deaf. And it's a whole community for the deaf employees. And it's remarkable. So then in that situation, I would be loaning my money to them, or I could have equity in the company, depending on how it's structured. It's usually debt and loaning it. And so like in 5 years, let's say I loan them 25,000, then I'm getting that paid back with the interest when everything goes well. And then it's the gift that keeps on giving, because I could actually then do another investment like that, or I could even transfer it back to my account at the National Christian Foundation, and I could grant it out. So many options, and it might feel a little bit intimidating if someone's not familiar with this space, but it's like anything, like you start learning the language, and I guarantee all of you listeners are definitely smart enough to be able to take the next step and, learn more about this topic. And the only other piece I want to add there that I think is an amazing opportunity coming up in January, third week of January, is if you're hearing about this idea of impact investing and the 25,000, we have a lot of people that say, my husband is aware of this space, but I don't know anything and I really want to learn. So we created this cohort called The Table. Starts the Tuesday, the 20th of January. And it's an hour and a half for 7 weeks. And it's actually not 25,000. It's actually 10,000 that you bring. So you bring 10,000 from your donor advised fund, or if it's private capital, you're putting it into the donor advised fund at Impact Foundation. And then we are like a collective giving circle. So let's say we've got 15 women, and this is all, we have a co-ed cohort, but a lot of women prefer just having the women together. And so let's say we have 15 women, 10,000 each, we've got $150,000. And it's basically like week one is, here are the terms. This is what impact investing is all about. Now, the next 5 weeks it's more like Shark Tank, where the companies are pitching us saying, I need new equipment for my kombucha factory in New Delhi, India. And here we are at 2 a.m. in India time pitching you women, because we would love for you to choose to invest in us. And then they leave the phone call or the Zoom call, and we're talking about, well, what is the risk? And do we think we'll get paid back? And then we go to the next week, and the next week is Minnow, which is a company that's like a Netflix for preschoolers and elementary kids with Christian values. And do we want to invest in that? So it allows you to dip your toe in the water. And at the end of that time, you vote on how you want your money allocated and which groups you love. And you don't see that 10,000 again, because it's all like a big pot that we're distributing out. But it gives everybody the confidence. And then we have a lot of those people that return, or then they return with a much bigger investment because now they understand how it works. But it's just a fun time to be alive in this investment space, especially for women, because there are so many cool opportunities. And once your heart gets involved with, these various groups that you're supporting, then you want to go travel and see them, and you want to give more, and you want to get your friends. And so I can't recommend it enough.
So much about what I'm hearing. First of all, just want to highlight, start giving now. If you're a young person, if you're just starting out in your career, make it a part of the discipline, a spiritual discipline, a practical, like a minimalism of not just collecting and collecting. That's beautiful. You hear about people even creating living caps ahead of time, which my husband and I did many years ago, that we decided this is how much we need. And the rest is really, Lord, what do you have for us? And that kind of, thoughtful discussions is so important. And then just these opportunities that wait us, very practically, the table. I'm like, I think I want to come to the table in January. And most certainly we can put information and link this in the bio of this conversation, because my heart and motive in having you is one, I just highly regard you, but I know that there are things that you have access to, information that will be life-changing, not just for the woman who's participating, but also those that are invested in or gifted.
Mm-hmm.
There's something really beautiful about imagining this cycle or this circle of women together, bolstering confidence, because for some, this is the first time. And so when you're hearing in a learning community, what did you do? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much happening in transformation. And then that would be transformation around our personal generosity impacting the world. This is so good.
Mm-hmm. We'll definitely put the link in the chat. And then you're also making me think of, for women across the country, another way to learn more about generosity is to be involved in a local giving circle. So, for example, here in San Diego, we have what's called Seeds San Diego. And you sign up for 3 years and you give $1,000 a year. And they have roughly 60 women in this group. We meet in person twice a year. And then they split that 60,000 a year. 30,000 goes to a domestic nonprofit, and 30,000 goes to an international nonprofit. And it's just a way where you're in community with these other women who are passionate about living together here in San Diego and doing something that's broader than just San Diego and wanting to change the world. But knowing that my little $1,000 is not going to be nearly as effective as a total of 30,000 when it's all combined. And so you vote and choose those organizations.
And ladies, if you're listening, the Freedom Challenge does have a Freedom Circle, and you can check that out on our website as well. It's an opportunity to give in community and to participate in something you're passionate about. Okay, last question. I can't believe it, but I want you to speak into us providing wisdom. How have you taught your children about stewardship, generosity? What would you recommend to us? I'm a grandmother. I'm thinking so differently than I even did when I was just a mother. We were church planters. We always wanted to be generous, but there was limitations there that are not as much. We were in the habit of giving no matter what, but I want to hear, because I'm thinking really strategically about the discipleship here. So what are some things that you've done or you've seen be done?
One thing when Mark was little that they had in the little Christian bookstore were those plastic banks where you would give your child the allowance and they could see, 80%. The 80-10-10 rule, I think, is a really practical way to teach our kids. You live on 80%, 10 goes to savings, you're paying yourself back. And the first 10 is the giving. So that's a simple thing. We supported some kids with compassion, and those little kids, would write their letters to us, and we would, as a family, support them each month. We had 4 kids rather close together, so I think I could have done a much better job at, cultivating those relationships, having the kids write letters back and being more involved. Some people then go visit that child. But I think that's also another way to really broaden the horizons of a child. And then I also think wherever, we talk about having resources here in the West or not, but however you look at it, we are so wealthy in our country of America compared to most of the world. And so it's just a lie if we don't, because look at the roads we drive in. We have we have clean water in our houses or apartments, and we are so blessed. So I think we can forget how blessed we all are compared to all the developing areas of the world. And sometimes I think in raising kids, it's hard to give them that perspective without going to an actual place. But sometimes fear is a part of it, and you think, oh, I don't think I can take a 4-year-old there. And when our kids were growing up, we were living in Orange County, and we were with Saddleback Church. So we had a few opportunities to do missions trips down to Tijuana and Ensenada. And I think at the time it was a little bit safer then than it is now. But those trips were transformative, because I could talk up until we were blue about how blessed we are living in America and we have food on the table. But when they saw, my daughter was in junior high. I think she was in 7th grade, our oldest at the time. And she saw a mom give a little pear in the gutter to her little 3-year-old child. And the 3-year-old just ate it gratefully. And And she came back to her junior high and wrote an essay about that. I didn't even see that happen when we were on that trip. But, I could say until I just 100 times that be grateful and all the things. But when they actually see the life that many people are living, or our son, he was little. I think he was like maybe 4, and we came back. And it was like a 1-day trip. And when he went to bed, he said, "I'm just really happy I have a pillow to put my head on." And, you could tell a child, be grateful for your pillow. But when he sees how these kids are living in Tijuana, right over the border, it looked very different. So whatever God's calling you to do in your family, don't be afraid. And, I'd encourage you, if there's some missions trip through your church, and again, if the support raising comes into that, like if he wants you there, he'll provide, and to take that next step, because it really could be just really transformative for everybody in your family, including yourself, like it was.
Such a great exhortation. And in many ways, we're on the same page about this. I'm thinking about when you were talking about this one specific time, my daughter, who's now a mama to 2, she and her younger brother came to me and said, I think we were doing, maybe it was World Vision at the time. They said, we don't want a Christmas present. We just want to buy from the catalog. And I have to tell you, I resisted their offering for a little bit. I was like, no, you're going to get a Christmas present. I want to reward you. And there was this moment where the Holy Spirit really invited my husband and I for them to step into what that was for the shaping of their future. And so that year now the littlest one, he was pretty darn little. We didn't subject him to that. But I remember my son picking the glasses for the kids, like in the little catalog. And we wrapped up the picture of the kids in the glasses. And that is what they opened. And I have to say, it felt so I don't know, but it was their heart's offering. So I just affirm like those moments. And also I want to speak to the fear piece, because for so long, my prayer, I'm sure it is yours too, because you have been engaged deeply into many places in the world, as you still are, you and your husband. Can our prayers be bigger than keep me safe and bless me? And what that means often as parents is discerning where God may ask us to step into something that doesn't feel reasonably safe, but feels like an invitation. And each one of my children, same thing. I remember getting some eyebrows raised at me sending my daughter with her school in 7th and 8th grade to the Dominican Republic by herself with her peers. And these moments where God is directing us and asking us to trust him with what seems most wealthy to us, which is our children, and then how he takes that and shapes that. And again, this is not a ploy for, throw caution to the wind, go wherever you want, but to really believe that God is shaping the worldview of our children, of our grandchildren, that the small things like the 10, 10, 80, in his hands are shaping Jesus followers that will thrive in abundance versus this idea of everything is scarce and I got to hold on for dear life for myself. And I know you've done all of that, and your grandbabies will be coming and you'll be doing the same.
Well, I love the catalog idea, and I want to incorporate that for our grandkids, because I saw those catalogs when our kids were older, and I thought the concept is amazing. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a wonderful idea.
It was their initiative. I was resisting it, Kim. I was trying to talk them out of it. So, well, I thank you for this wealth of information on wealth, spiritual wealth, all the things that God has put in our hands. You're a treasure. I'm so glad you're a freedom sister and an advisor, a mentor to me. And I am so blessed to know you, dear friend.
I am so blessed to know you too. Thank you so much. And I was just thinking the third organization I didn't jump into at all, though, if people want to look it up, is called womendoingwell.org.
Yes.
And that really helps you. You can join a pathway online for 12 weeks. And it's totally free, no money investment required, but you're going to learn your 2-word purpose statement, which was hard-coded in your DNA, your passions. Maybe you're really passionate right now about anti-trafficking, but in college it was homelessness or clean water, that can change. And then your plan for generosity. So your purpose, your passion, your plan for generosity. But that's also even a step before setting up a donor advised fund to kind of know who God shaped you to be and then the impact you can make in the world. So thanks for having me, Tracy. Always such a treat.
Yes. And to affirm women doing well, I know my statement, affirming significance. I loved the program and again, highly recommend it. We will also have connection to women doing well in the link in our bio. And if you friends are looking to get involved with the Freedom Challenge this year, you can challenge yourself. You can pray intentionally. You can give generously, as we just spoke about. Or you can participate in one of our many events this year in 2026. Our Thailand mission trip was already filled up, so don't sleep on these events that are coming. I know there's one that is open now, and in the next month, our entire 2026 and even into 2027 will be opening for you to prayerfully consider all of the opportunities. But until next time, let's do good by helping enslaved women and children do more than you ever thought physically possible. There's many opportunities to join us and do it together by connecting with other women like Kim Moeller who have a heart for a hurting world. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. If you liked what you heard, join the fight to set women and children on a pathway to freedom across the globe. We are a proud ministry of Operation Mobilization USA and encourage you to learn more at thefreedomchallenge.com and omusa.org for how you can get involved. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram at the FCUSA, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.